Hey there, storytellers, welcome back to my channel. Yes, it is that time again. It's time for the mid-year book freakout tag. For whatever reason, I decided, you know what, let's do it in the exact same spot you had your mid-year book freakout last year. Because that made sense to me, for whatever reason. Anyway, without any further ado, I'm gonna get into this tag here real quick. I think most people are familiar with it, but for those of you who are not, it is basically a list of questions. They will be linked down in the description below, sort of asking you to reflect on the books you read for the first half of the year. And for me, I'm going to say anything that I read prior to June. Anything before June 1st is fair game. But without any further ado, let's get into these questions. Let's get into this freak out and see where the year is going to go from there. Question 1 is, what is the best book you have read so far this year? And for me, that has to be The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a historic fiction novel following Hollywood starlet Evelyn Hugo and her journey through life and through several different husbands. But you get to know Evelyn, and she makes some really bad choices. She is not the greatest of people. She's a very flawed individual, but she's so entertaining and so unapologetic. She knows she's made bad choices. She knows most people would vilify her for them, and she doesn't care. And that was something that was incredibly refreshing. But it's also got some fantastic queer rep, as Evelyn's true love may not actually have been any of her husbands. I kept hearing things about this book on BookTube for so long, and it sounded so good. I read it at the beginning of the year, and it just kicked me off for such a fantastic ride. I did the audiobook. I do obviously own the physical edition as well, but the audiobook is fantastic. The narrator does such a good job just adding that layer of sass to Evelyn that you can just tell she's made her own way in life, and she just does not give an F what you have to say about it. She's a super fun, kind of unlikable character, and I highly recommend this one. Question 2 is, what is the best sequel you have read so far this year? And for me, that has to be The Camelot Betrayal by Kirsten White. The Camelot Betrayal is the sequel to The Guinevere Deception, which is a retelling of Arthurian legend from Guinevere's perspective, except Guinevere isn't who she says she is. Guinevere is in fact a changeling who has been sent to protect Arthur from some evil forces at work, except in The Camelot Betrayal, you learn some wild things. You think you kind of know who Guinevere is. Guinevere thinks she kind of knows who Guinevere is. And then you get to The Camelot Betrayal, and just so many questions get brought up right before the book ends, and it ends on this crazy moment of a cliffhanger, and you're sitting there like, okay, who's the bad guy again? Is she really, is she really Guinevere this whole time? Are her memories fake, and her fake memories are the real one? Like, what? It's so good. I cannot wait for the conclusion to this series. I absolutely love Arthurian retellings, and this one absolutely is up there in terms of one of the best. I love Guinevere. She was a little bit annoying at first, but I grew to love her, and I love Mordred. I know I shouldn't, because he's not supposed to be the good guy, but I like him anyway. That being said, I like Arthur as well, so who I want her to end up with, I really don't know. I like them both for different reasons. I guess the conclusion will tell me who she ends up with. I might have to rewrite it in my head if I don't really like it. I think when I get down to the wire and we get down to that last sort of reveal on the final book, my heart will decide in the moment who I really want her to be with, and I'll either be really happy about it or not. Or maybe she won't be with anyone. She'll just be a badass all on her own. So I'd be happy with that too. Anyway, fantastic sequel. fantastic series so far. Another recommend. And that brings us on to question 3, which is a new release that you haven't read yet but want to. And for me, that is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I read Casey's first novel, Red, White, and Royal Blue, when it was getting hyped up, and it was worth the hype. I love their love. It was beautiful and just so snarky and sassy and fun and believable. You know, they're both stubborn, so of course they cause issues for each other in their own relationship, and they self-sabotage, and it's a mess, but I loved it. But I think this one is probably also going to be worth the hype. This follows 2 lovely ladies. They're sort of star-crossed through time lovers. We have 23-year-old August, who lives in the present day New York City. She's cynical. She's kind of over most things in life, it seems like, from the description. And she meets Jane, who seems cool and kind of gives off retro vibes, and she's this cool chick that August sees on the train, and they sort of strike up a relationship with each other, only August learns that Jane doesn't just seem like a retro chick. She is a retro chick. She is lost in time from the 1970s, so talk about a long-distance relationship. But if their relationship is anything like Henry and Alex's from Red, White, and Royal Blue, it's going to be amazing. I'm gonna get swoony and emotional and giggly all at once, and I can't wait. Question 4 is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And for me, that is a tie between 2, because I'm absolutely just salivating for Any Way the Wind Blows by Rainbow Rowell. It is the last in the Simon Snow series, and I love Carry On. I love Wayward Son. It's corny, but it's so good. And that's all I really want to say. It follows Simon Snow and his nemesis Baz, who ends up not being such a nemesis after all, as they sort of get on these adventures, saving their magical world. And it's just, like I said, it's kind of corny, but in the best way, and they're just so much fun. I adore them so much. I love Baz. He is a snarky mofo, and I adore him. I really, really do. And my other most anticipated release is The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson. It is the next book in the Stevie Bell mystery series. I think it's a standalone, don't quote me on that. Stevie Bell is her character from the Truly Devious series, which is a trilogy, and those are technically wrapped up. Stevie has solved the Ellingham Academy case, but she goes off and works at a summer camp along with some of the characters from the Truly Devious series, and lo and behold, Detective Stevie Bell comes across another mystery she has to solve, and it's set at a summer camp, and it just sounds like a perfect, cozy summer mystery. I absolutely loved Truly Devious. I was super excited each time a new book came out in that series, so I was beyond ready for more when I found out there was going to be another book with Stevie and the gang. So those are my 2 most anticipated for the next half of the year. Question 5 is biggest disappointment. And for me, that has to be Black Buck by Matteo Escaripor. Not because it wasn't good, but just because it didn't wrap up the way that I personally would have found most satisfying. That's all it is. It's totally subjective. It's not a bad book. It doesn't have a bad ending. It has a fairly, I think, grounded ending for how wild the story gets, but it wasn't quite satisfying for me. You know, after all that craziness, I kind of wanted a crazy, out there, how did this all wrap up so well kind of ending, just because I wanted that kind of wild ride, and that's just not how it ended. So that was the only reason it was my biggest disappointment. It was just because, held up to the books I have finished this year, I didn't like the ending as much. On the flip side, question 6 is biggest surprise, and for me that had to be The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is a fantasy novel. I don't know how to describe it because it's kind of set in this futuristic time where there's like, it gives off a kind of dystopian society kind of vibe, but I don't think that's what it's meant to be doing. I think that it's just set in this society that has magical children, and so there's, I don't know how to describe it, institutions in place to keep the magical children under control. And our main character's job is to go to these orphanages, basically, where these magical children live and make sure that they're getting the education and like rehabilitation into society that they want for these magical children so they can conform, basically. And it's kind of this whole story about living in a world that wants you to conform to being one thing when you're really meant to be something else. And that deeper message throughout the story is so beautifully done. It's not overly, I mean, there's moments where it's kind of overhanded, but most of it's really just beautifully woven throughout, and the characters are so lovable. I honestly thought at the beginning of the book, from like the start of the first chapter, the way it was going, that I wasn't going to like it at all. I thought maybe kinda, but I ended up loving it, and it was a huge surprise to me. So question 7 is favorite new author, and they can be a debut author or an author that's new to you. And for me, I have to go with an author that was new to me, Alice Oseman, who writes the Heartstopper graphic novel / webcomic series. I didn't anticipate disliking them. I just thought they'd be something that I thought was okay and cute and, you know, great, passing on, next thing. And they're actually really adorable, and I fell in love with them. So Alice Oseman is definitely a new fave author.
Mary from the editing chair here to say I just saw an article as I was getting a picture to use in the video of Heartstopper that Netflix has the rights to the series and is going to be making a show. I'll link the article down below. It's from January, so fingers crossed that it's accurate.
Question 8 is newest fictional crush. And I can't say I strongly favor any of my current characters that I've read so far as a fictional crush. I do think I have one in terms of the book I am currently reading, but I'm excluding that because it's June and I'm reading it in June, not prior, so that takes it off the table. In terms of the ones I did read, though, I think I'm gonna go with Dan from Someday Someday Maybe by Lauren Graham. Yes, Lauren Graham of Gilmore Girls. We love to see it. I love when actors and public figures write books that are actually good. It's so much fun. She is such a good storyteller. You can just tell she like really knew this character and was really one with her as she was writing the story. It flows very well. But that being said, Dan is somebody who appreciates our main character Franny exactly as she is. He likes her quirks, he likes that she has crazy creative dreams, and he understands it because he is an aspiring writer, and he just strives to support her exactly as she is on her journey and help her get to where she wants to go, and he was sweet. I really liked him. Question 9 is your newest favorite character, and for me that is absolutely Iria Adair from Witches Steeped in Gold by C.N. and Smart. Iria is the long-lost Empress's daughter, basically. There's a current doyen, and she overthrew the past doyen, and everyone believed Iria, aka the past doyen's daughter, to be dead or just sort of a fictional story that people tell their kids to inspire them to, you know, just fight for better times, fight for better rulership than the current rule. I'm trying to explain this without totally spoiling the book. But Iria is such a fiery, passionate, intense, smart kind of character, and she's just all around awesome. She's not she's flawed. Don't get me wrong. She's not perfect. She makes mistakes. She makes bad choices. She's not always the most pleasant person, but with good reason, in my opinion. But she's just so strong of a character, and I do mean that sort of dually. She's very strong in her natural, like, characterization, if that makes sense. Like, she is a strong character, but she's strong in the sense that her presence on the written page is just unignorable. I kept reading this book at parts where I was struggling to get through it because of myself, mostly. But there were times where a high fantasy is just something that's hard to get through when you're not quite in the mindset, and there were times when I wasn't quite in the mindset, but I kept reading because I really enjoyed Iria and I needed to see where she ended up. She's absolutely a new favorite, and I'm so glad there's another book in this series because I'm not ready to be done with her yet. Question 10 is a book that made you cry, and I can't say any of them have really made me cry the way I like to sometimes when I'm reading a book. Sometimes I like to read a book that crushes my soul. Sometimes you need the catharsis, you know. But nothing so far to this point in the year has made me cry. It's really the only answer I have, and that is Heartstopper Volume 2 and 3 got the closest to making me cry, in the sense that they started tackling a lot more sensitive subject matter than I first anticipated with Volume 1. Volume 1 is very meet cute, and volumes 2 and 3 start to delve into complications, both with their relationship and their mental health, both individually and separate and together. And it's done very tastefully and respectfully, but it did hit some chords emotionally. I didn't cry, but I did feel for those characters because they are adorable, and what they're going through is some hard stuff. So that is the closest. Question 11 is a book that made you happy, and without a doubt, I had to go with The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I have talked about it so much recently because I did a reread of it. I did the journaling spread inspired by it. I've rewatched the films recently. I just love The Hobbit. I love Lord of the Rings as well, but I especially love The Hobbit because it really just has that kind of cozy Shire vibe throughout the whole story, even though it gets kind of intense at some parts. They're dealing with serious things. The start of, Lord of the Rings kind of kicks off within The Hobbit, but Lord of the Rings is obviously a darker, heavier story, and this one still kind of maintains that lighthearted adventure feel to it, and Bilbo's just so gosh darn lovable, and anytime I read about the Shire, it just makes me so happy. So I'm literally I'm cheesing over here thinking about the Shire. So yeah, this had to be it because it just makes me so happy. We are nearing the end here, folks. Second to last question. Question 12 is, what is the most beautiful book you have bought or received so far this year? And for me, that has to be Amelia Unabridged by Ashley Schumacher. And it is about a girl named Amelia who is tackling grief and guilt regarding the death of her best friend. At the open of the story, I believe they go to an author event together, and her friend gets to talk to this author that they both really love, and Amelia doesn't, and so she's jealous and mad at her friend, and they sort of leave things on a negative note before her friend passes, and Amelia's dealing with a lot of unresolved feelings about it, and then she ends up meeting this author in a bookstore, and I assume the story goes from there. I assume is a story that is about predominantly grief and dealing with it and regret and sort of finding yourself and learning to live again after you've lost someone important. So it's definitely not a light read. It definitely seems like it's going to be a pretty heavy-hitting emotional gut punch. So I haven't touched it yet in that sense because I'm not ready for something like that. I might be in the mood for it down the line, but I've been in a stressful state myself, so I definitely didn't need to add more emotional stress to my life. But the cover is just gorgeous. It is this dark navy, and in the background you can see the sort of outline of the horizon line on the ocean, and in the foreground there's this bookshelf illustration with, I assume, Amelia and the author sitting next to each other down in front of the shelves, and coming up from around them there's sort of the ringlets of water, like when you drop water into a pool and you see the rings ripple out, the ripple marks, I guess I could say, and coming out of that is like seaweed, and there's a whale floating by, and behind that illustration is, I assume, Amelia again, sort of picked out in side profile in black and white, so it stands out against the cover because it's black and white, the cover is this deep navy blue, and then the other illustrations are done in like this hot pink and mustard orange and this violet. It's like very vibrant violet, and then like this sort of neon orange almost. So it's manages to be colorful in a really subtle way. And Amelia on a Bridge, the title is picked out in white, so it stands out against all that color, but the color's not too flashy. It's just, it's such a beautiful cover that I stare at it sometimes, just to stare at it. So it's definitely the most beautiful book I've purchased so far this year. And last but not least, question 13 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And the short answer is, so many. But the slightly longer answer is, I'm going to limit it to 8 books because, like I said, so many. But in no particular order, the books that I need to get to by the end of the year are Tokyo Ever After by Amiko Jean. This is not basically, because it's going to be different and it's going to be fantastic, but the premise is essentially the Princess Diaries, but set in Japan. I love the Princess Diaries. I love the concept of the Princess Diaries, of this girl who didn't know she was a royal finding out, and all kinds of hijinks ensue. So that is what this book promises, and I need to read it. Next, I need to get to Some Girls Do by Jennifer Dugan. I have not read her second novel, Verona Comics, yet. I have read her debut novel, Hot Dog Girl, loved it. This follows 2 ladies, one who is a beauty queen who likes to fix up cars, and the other one is a track athlete. Yeah, she's a track athlete. But the 2 girls meet, they kind of seemingly have nothing in common, but they form a bond. And I believe it's set during the summer. They have maybe a little whirlwind romance going on. It looks adorable. Next one I need to get to is Heartstopper Volume 4. I kind of read Volume 3 online, so I'd like to get the physical copy of it, like get my hands on it so I can like really read it through properly and like remind myself of where I was in the story when I get my hands on Volume 4 so that I can continue, because like I said, it got emotionally complex and really well done and adorable. So then I need to get to many of the books, but keeping it short with one, I need to get to Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I am absolutely intrigued by the Netflix show. I need to see it, but I haven't watched it yet because I want to read the stories that is based on, because I know it's a mashup of the Shadow and Bone trilogy and the Six of Crows duology, which I do have. They're here on the shelf, along with the rest of the Grishaverse trilogy. So I want to get to them. I really, really do. The next one I want to get to is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. And this is a dark academia novel set at a Shakespearean conservatory, I believe. Some kind of fancy schmancy arts academy. And basically this group of characters, I think, are part of the Shakespeare club, or they have their own little breakout group. I don't know how to explain it. But one of them, I believe, dies, and one of them gets arrested, but I don't know for sure if it's the one who actually did it. And it's kind of part confessional, part dark academia novel. It promises to be a fantastic read. Part of me wants to save it for fall, and part of me just wants to give it like now. So who knows when I'll read this, but it's definitely going to be by the end of this year. Coming to the end here, I promise. Next, I have Legendborn by Tracy Dion. This is another Arthurian retelling, and it follows our main character, whose name I can't remember at the moment, Bree, and she gets, I believe, an accident happens to her mother, and when she finds out, she unleashes her magic, if I'm understanding correctly, and she gets sort of sent off to this school where there's a secret society of those called the Legendborn, and some are kind of the Merlins, who sort of, I would assume, guide the sort of Arthur figures into demon fighting, monster hunting, all that good stuff. At any rate, the cover just promises for the story to be dynamic and fantastic, and I want to get to it so bad, but I've been waffling on reading, especially fantasy, so it's been a tough moment, but I'm hoping that I can get to it soon. The next to last book that I definitely need to get to by the end of the year, keeping the list short, is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is another sort of historical fiction wherein the characters are sort of fictional stars, and this is a sort of fictional biography. I don't know if we get each character's point of view, but I think it follows the children of a star. I'm not entirely sure. I think it follows the children of a Hollywood star and sort of their lives. I quite honestly haven't read the official synopsis. I just saw that blurb, but I loved Daisy Jones and the Six and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, so it was a no-brainer to pick this one up as well. And last, but certainly not least, the last book that I absolutely need to get to this year and am currently in the process of getting to is Better Together by Christine Riccio. And it follows these two sisters, Siri and Jamie, who haven't seen each other in over a decade because their parents split them up. Yep, you heard it. It's kind of what you're thinking. It's a Parent Trap meets Freaky Friday kind of situation. And let me tell you, I'm about halfway through and it is delivering. This is such a fun story. It has all the fantastic summer camp kind of vibes at the start of it that the Parent Trap has in that movie, you know, the kickoff event where they get sort of find each other and swap places. It's there, but it has that Freaky Friday magic moment. It's so good. I am loving it. I did not think I would like Siri at first, but she's grown on me. She has this quirk that annoyed me, and I will elaborate a little bit more in my wrap-up for sure, because this will definitely be on my June wrap-up, but I've come to love it, and I love this book so much so far, and I haven't even gotten to the end yet. But that is it for this year's mid-year book freak-out tag. I think I freaked out enough on you for a little while. I definitely freaked out at the end there with my list of books that I need to get to. Are any of my sort of most anticipated / need to get to books on your TBRs? Have you read any of them already? Some of them have been out for a while and you feasibly could have read them. So if you have and you enjoyed them, do let me know. And if you have any answers to the mid-year book freakout questions that you want to share with me down in the comments, go right ahead and do it because I love to engage with you guys. I like to know people's opinions and I like to know what you're reading as well. So definitely let me know what you're thinking. I would let you know what next week's video is going to be, but quite frankly, it's going to be a surprise to me as well because I still don't know yet. I didn't know when I planned my journal video and I don't know now. So I can't really tell you. I can promise it's going to be bookish. So you have that to look forward to. But for now, I'm going to go. If you want to keep up with me and all of my bookish videos, you can go ahead and click the subscribe button. And I highly recommend that you ring the little bell so that you don't miss a beat. It will absolutely notify you when I post that video next week, whatever it may be. So hold on to your hats until then and ring that bell so you don't miss it. I will see you guys in the next one because I do post videos every Friday. Bye!